Right now, we posit all the questions, encode the questions that we want the AI to learn. And that's the optimization part of it. We're telling it what the optimization is. Now, when a computer can make its own optimizations by interacting with information from the outside world, and it goes, okay, I've been doing this, but maybe I could try this, and nobody's telling me what to do. That's me saying that because I'm looking at all the information from the outside world. And then it makes something new and it optimizes something new and generates a new capability that we've never thought of before. That would be AGI. It's nice that you predict something, but if your prediction has no value in a highly liquid market, preferably adversarial in nature, in AI, we have specific generations, and the third generation of AI was just like neural nets and machine learning. Like, let's build black box systems and find correlations between data and try to predict things. And that has been very successful, culminating in transformers in 2017 and LLMs. And that's all they really do. LLMs just predict the next word in a sequence of words. It's not smart. It's not intelligent. It really doesn't do anything special. And I don't even know if LLMs really have much of a market. Like, is OpenAI even profitable? I don't think so. Markets are eternal. They never die. They're always 24/7. Political ideologies die all the time. They don't matter. They ebb and flow. It's just like a butterfly on the wind. But markets are what drive our productivity, our families, our values, our ability to rise up and have a better life, to have meaning in our life. Without free markets and cooperation, relationships, and friendships, we have no meaning in life. We'll just be poor and destitute and upset and always just political all the time. I don't really want that for the world. I just want people to have good families, family values, be accepting of other people's foibles and differences, but at the same time, be prosperous. And prosperity allows for things like art and politics and science and all these things to flourish. And so it just underlies everything, in my opinion. Everything's a transaction, if you think about it.
Welcome to the Ventura Labs podcast. Today, we're joined by Stephen Rothwell, whose expertise bridges physics, economics, and artificial intelligence. Sharing insights from academia to pioneering AI and sports betting, he covers crypto's impact on prediction markets, machine learning challenges, and Bittensor's mission to drive AI innovation. Stephen offers a contrarian perspective challenging the zeitgeist of AI optimism, emphasizing humility, competitive edges, and the delicate balance between exploration and exploitation in machine intelligence. Now, back to Stephen with the 33rd Ventura Labs podcast. All right, Stephen, good to get you on the podcast today. For all the people that know your alias, they can now put a face behind the profile.
Cheers, Grant. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I just want to start with, if you could share your story on how you got involved with AI and sports betting back in the beginning. What sparked your interest in this intersection?
Yeah, so I've always been kind of a quantitative guy. I started off in university, economics degree. I spent 7 years as an undergrad, so kind of ridiculous, but ended up doing a second dual degree in physics and math, and I became what's called a nuclear magnetic resonance specialist. And what that means is you take a huge magnet and you scan things and you figure out, how atomic structures are basically I guess, constructed using a magnet, and you can determine what molecules are in some sort of sample. And so that's what I was doing in university. But kind of the neat thing about that is it's very quantitative work. So I was always interested in mathematics, statistics. That was my degree. Ended up graduating physics, and then my first job was at this kind of weird company in Vancouver in Canada here, and called D-Wave Quantum Computers. And so because I just really mastered nuclear physics, I got to understand a little bit about quantitative algorithms on a quantum computer, and that was kind of like my first introduction to AI. Because at D-Wave, they were very concerned with this thing called quantum machine learning. I know it's a bit much probably for the average Bittensor person, but basically what you can do is you can speed up classical computations using a quantum computer or properties of atomic systems. And, it kind of leads itself to machine learning because there's optimization involved in that. And so I really got into it there. What happened at D-Wave was company kind of grew. Actually went IPO and 20 years later after I joined. So quite a long journey for anyone who had early shares. And what happened there was the CTO of Goldman Sachs, Warren Brownell, basically took over the CEO position. So Goldman Sachs kind of rolled in because they're always looking forward. And I learned a lot about numerical optimization in financial markets there. So that was like, you know, putting an entire PhD in about 6 months. And so, because you're sitting there with people who are just demanding that you perform. And that was kind of really neat because they were coming in and asking us to do things like metropolis algorithms and something called quadratic unconstrained binary optimization on large portfolios, say like 50 stocks, and you're trying to find correlates and anti-correlates in them so that you maximize your return. And so they were very interested in using this hardware to do that. And that was a lot of fun. So I learned a lot about AI there, particularly convex optimization. I got really interested in that and then went back to get my master's degree at UBC in convex optimization. So that's kind of what I mastered. And so kind of underlying machine learning, most of machine learning algorithms is convex optimization, which makes things very efficient on a computer to compute things like global minima, global optima. And that was kind of interesting. And so after that, I did a little stint at Amazon. And I was kind of there for what I would call second wave AI, where we were kind of learning recommendation systems in 2010. That was before there's no such thing as TensorFlow or Python or anything like that. You had to like do everything from scratch in C++. And that kind of Amazon, we were kind of doing that, and Python was just coming around, and we were just kind of learning recommendation systems. So you might buy a book on Amazon, and then you would get recommended a book. So you buy Lord of the Rings, you might get like, I don't know, the Belgariad by David Eddings or something like that. And so we would try to recommend to you the next best thing to buy. And so that took like a lot of my time up working in the book selling division at Amazon. I learned a lot about scale and computation at scale there. And that's kind of, I guess, where my AI chops come from is, a little bit academia and a lot of trial by fire in industry, in finance and book selling, basically. So that was kind of interesting. And then from there, I kind of got into sports betting. I started a startup. I was always interested in sports, being an athlete myself, so a baseball guy. Dad was a baseball player, so just really understood baseball. And I just noticed that they had a pitch physics data, something called PitchFX, came out where they took cameras in the stands and they were recording pitch trajectories. And so because we could reconstruct the actual physics of the pitch batter relationship, right away I saw that there was a methodology to use machine learning to probably do better than the average person. Average person is just guessing things based off of team-based statistics, like aggregates, like how many runs do you score over 9 innings, or how many strikeouts do you get over 9 innings, or something like that. But for me, I saw the ability to make pure simulations using machine learning. So we started coding up neural nets for that, and me and a couple partners in 2010, 2011. Ended up making a sports betting syndicate, and that was very successful because we were 10 years ahead of the time. And we just kind of went along with that for 5 years. It was called Steam Shark was the company's name here in Vancouver, and we just kind of worked with a lot of syndicates, and we learned the business of betting, which was quite a journey. So that's kind of like my early story, how I got into AI, and then it's kind of ballooned from there into sports.
And this sports company you started, you had an IPO for it, no? Or IPO'd, right?
My first one I just sold directly. So like I had a lot of little companies where we were just working in neural nets, and then Python came along and changed everything, because then you had TensorFlow, like Google came up with TensorFlow. And so you had the ability to, quickly iterate and build greedy models instead of convex optimization models. So we were using lots of things like support vector machines, and these are what you would call convex models, guaranteed global optima, but they're not very robust at learning kind of difficult patterns. Like in baseball, the interaction between the count and the pitch outcome is very important. It's nonlinear in its nature. And so TensorFlow would come along. And so that first company I I sold in 2014, I think, for like not very much money. Like it wasn't a very good exit at all. But I made some money and it was okay. I started up a second company, kind of just selling, like I was trying to sell picks. That didn't work out very well. And then I got into just the pure notion of being an originator for syndicates. So like these guys who move millions of dollars around, they need quants, right? And so my second company was very private. It was a quant-based company. I basically developed my algorithms more as TensorFlow was. So that's kind of why I was talking about that. Why TensorFlow was just kind of really getting into its groove there in 2015, 2016, and we were allowed to build better systems and more concurrent systems using a programming language called Elixir. So like we were making these really nice concurrent systems, which were statistically bootstrapping player pitcher versus batter models, and that was really really neat because it was like 10 years ahead of everyone else. So we were just killing it, making money. We would work with movers behind the scenes. Movers are people in the sports betting industry who move millions of dollars per bet, looking for arbitrage opportunities. But when you have the ability to actually beat the line, which is extremely difficult problem to do, that became a very lucrative business for me. And then we ended up selling that to a company called Fancy Night Entertainment in late 2017 for an undisclosed sum. I'm not going to say that, but it was pretty good for me. That was like the first time where I really made it. So that was kind of nice. And then, yeah, it kind of led to a company called Fancy Night, which was a much bigger play in crypto. Yeah.
And then when we first talked, you said this got acquired by Better, Jake Paul's thing, right?
Yeah, quite a journey. So Fancy Night was originally an Ethereum. They were basically the first company to try to build a sports betting exchange on Ethereum. Of course, in 2017, that's when we were doing that, when there was like no technology of any note in crypto. I mean, Ethereum was cool. You could build a smart contract and do like 5 TPS per second. But the TPS per second you need in sports betting can be several thousand, especially in things like the World Cup, where you have massive volume. You need mass concurrency for these markets, and then managing the state on Ethereum was brutal. So like, we ended up like launching on Covent's testnet. We won some awards in like New York and stuff. Like New York, we went to New York as Canadians, and then they just gave us some awards at some crypto conference, and we thought we were great and everything. But it turned out that Ethereum was pretty bad. Then the bear came, of course, in 2018, 2019. We raised like $5.5–7 million, somewhere in between there. I wasn't the finance guy, so I'm just giving you a range, but it was pretty good. And so we tried to launch on Ethereum, but it just turned out that the investors wanted to go more TradFi. So that went IPO for like $30 million or something like that. I forget what it was. It was pretty close to $30 million for a raise, and then I think the valuation was like 250 million or something like that. And the idea was that we were going to build out more of a bricks and mortar type business, a traditional business in sports betting, where you're building the infrastructure for basically a white, what would you call it? A white label? Yeah, like a white labeling for sports betting. So people would come in and they would use that technology to spin up their book because they have the marketing expertise, but they don't have the technical expertise. We were trying to merge Ethereum with that so that people could take crypto bets, but that was still in a nascent period. As we know, Rollbit came around, a very famous crypto project, but they didn't. There was like the technology just wasn't there yet, and so like they ended up abandoning that, which was pretty sad for me. That's when I left the company in 2019 because they weren't doing crypto anymore, and crypto was like the thing that I was very interested in. But it was a very fun experience at Fans Unite. My job there was to build AI systems to manage risk. So basically, players bet, and we want to make sure that we're not getting sauced by the best bettors in the world. Because if you offer very low odds, which is what we were trying to do, you're going to get destroyed by very sharp bettors who are very, very quantitatively good at what they do. So that was kind of my thing as a risk manager there, and that was very lucrative. And so we went public, and then I exited, and then they did their own thing.
And what was the significance of crypto on the sports betting industry as a whole?
Very significant. boy, I could probably talk for 2 hours with you on that, but I'll try to keep it to 5 minutes or maybe 3 minutes or something like that. Something shorter, digestible. How can I wrap that all up in a nice? I guess the significance of crypto and sports betting is that there is a relationship between the bettors who win money, the bettors who lose money. So we call them the sharps and the fish, respectively, and the bookmaker themselves. The bookmaker wants to take the information from the sharp bettor, but they don't want to give the sharp bettor a single dollar. You don't want to take any money from sharp bettors. So what they end up doing is they ban your accounts 24/7. So if I win money, either I'm limited to, like on William Hill, I think I could bet like $4 or something like that, which is like not great because I need to bet a lot of money because the turnover has to be pretty big because you get like max 3% ROI on your betting, right? So you have to bet a lot of money and you need a lot of volume. And so they limit you to $2 once they find out that you're a winner because they track all your bets. So you're constantly dancing in and out of accounts as a sharp bettor. So they're very hostile and caustic to sharp bettors. They don't want you to win. The fish, if you're a sorry, I shouldn't swear. If you're a bad bettor, what happens is you're welcome. You're welcome. Bet whatever you want. Anything you want, we'll give you. We'll even give you 10% back on your losses sometimes. Like you can get that. So it turns out that the concept of winning is just not allowed in TradFi. And so in a smart contract environment, you are allowed to win because you can't stop it. It's programmatic, right? So code is law. That means that you can't ban or limit a winning bettor. And so it's conceptually a fair environment. It's just, it's PvP sportsbook versus the sharp bettor. And that's kind of what we would really like to be. I mean, if you're a bookmaker making all this money, you should be pretty good at setting the odds. And so if you're getting sauced, that's your problem. But, they kind of ban you. And so the relationship of crypto is the smart contract allows for a more fair environment. And the decentralization allows for lack of control of the central authority on setting prices as well. So you get better prices because you get many people who can make markets on something like BetDex Labs or something like that, which is on Solana. I think that was SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried's company on Solana. But still a very good idea because you can have many market makers come in and make the market. And now you see in Polymarket, that vision is really coming to life. So a very, very healthy relationship, crypto and sports betting. Yeah. Provably fair.
In your personal journey, what were the biggest challenges for you coming from this AI background and applying AI to sports betting?
Oh, AI. Well, again, I can go on for 2 hours, but I'll give you the main problem. So the main problem is that your edge is constantly under attack. The industry is always getting smarter all the time. When I first started out in 2010, I was 10 years ahead of everyone because I knew how to code neural nets from scratch. Very fast, very accurate, no mistakes. Very few, well, maybe not no mistakes, few mistakes. But then Python comes out. And then now everyone is a neural net, artificer. They can magic up anything they want in a black box system and, get at least some kind of basic result. And then data comes out, and now, data comes out with the PitchFX system and the baseball system. NBA has an API where they're giving out their shot data. So everyone can now get this data and plug it into a neural net, and then they can take basically a YouTube tutorial and basically get 85% to where a professional can be. No joke. And now you have GPT, so GPT can just code it all for you. So basically, we're always, as sharps, are under attack, and our edges are always under attack all the time. And so you have to get better and better and better as time goes on. And so, what that leads into is more simulation-based modeling, where you have to model every single pitch or every single shot in an NBA game, and you're trying to push that all together into a realistic simulation that returns realistic results that outsmarts the actual line itself, the closing line of the sports book. Closing line is the final odd of the sports book. And if you think about it, what odds are is really just an ensemble of machine learning algorithms. Some of them really, really bad in the left tail, some of them very good in the right tail. And so what you're going against as a sharp sports bettor is thousands and thousands and thousands of models in ensemble giving the sports book an average odd. And you have to be in the right tail of that, okay, of the distribution. You got to be in the right tail. And if you are, you win and you make a lot of money. If you're not, you're going to lose a ton of money real fast. And so that right tail has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking over the year. Now it's very, very small, and only very few of us can actually win. And so that's very challenging. And so what that does is it leads you into very, very challenging environment where we're dealing with what's called small data models. So all these models that you see built, like LLMs, like things like shoots, like LLMs and voice models, these come inherent with extremely large data sets or weights computed from large data sets that you can copy and then resell as resold inference, basically, which is not a bad business. I'm just saying that's what they're doing. So they're reselling inference, which is reselling the weights that guys like Llama or Facebook or Llama have computed, and then you can tweak that. You can use that as sort of a baseline for your own machine learning system and try to train specific LLMs or something. So what I'm going on here about is that those big data models come with large data sets or weights computed from that. And what that does is it gives you very, very easy inference. Like when you have a lot of data, it's like easy street because you can find out the patterns in the data because you have tons and tons of it. But in sports betting, very, very small data sets. And so you're dealing with hyper challenging problems with very small data sets where you're trying to make inference from that and get a good prediction for a game outcome from that. But your data is like maybe 4,000, 5,000 pitches, which is not enough to really train a neural net properly. So you have to like really fight to use these advanced techniques to get an advantage. And then they have to be concurrent as well. So what ends up happening, and the biggest challenge actually, is when you're making a statistical prediction in sports betting, you have to like do something called the statistical bootstrap. So you're like taking a model and then you have to build like 1,000 of them and then average it out. And that is like huge computational burden because you have to use a programmatic language like Elixir to handle many thousands of concurrent machine learning tasks at once distributed over many computers. That's where it's at right now. In 2010, it was a linear regression. That's it. So you do a linear regression on like aggregate team stats. And so that's the curve that has occurred over the last 15 years, and it's absolutely brutal. And that's where we're at right now. Machine learning eats the world, basically.
And I was reading some of your articles today, and I think, if I remember correctly, that you said you had to even switch off Python to Go for the concurrency so it's faster.
Yeah, I don't use Python at all. We use Elixir, which is based off a programming language called Erlang, runs 60% of all architecture in the world, telecom system. It's built by a guy named Armstrong, who very famous. And what Erlang does is it just helps you organize and run and keep online many, even millions of systems, millions of processes at once. So we threw Python out, and we were computing on C++, but with using Erlang as the orchestrator. Now in Erlang, we have something called Axon, which is a competitor to TensorFlow. I actually think it's a lot better than TensorFlow. I don't like TensorFlow at all. And now you can code entire machine learning architectures in a concurrent environment. And it's actually faster than Python and TensorFlow because most machine learning algorithms are in essence graph-based. When you break it down, functional. It's a functional programming language. So it's a graph-based system, and then you can sort of embed that recipe in memory or on GPU, and then you can just run data through it. It's very fast, very efficient. So Python we haven't used in many years now because it's just inefficient, and that's it.
And
For
then,
our particular problem, it's very good for big data problems, but for us, when we must spawn many processes, not so good.
and then, how did you bring all of this experience and knowledge together in what you now do? And you work on Bittensor in Subnet 41 as an advisor, I believe. I don't know what your official title is, but you
Oh,
can.
yeah. I just kind of came to them. They're very nice guys, by the way. Very good team, and I like them a lot. I saw that they were struggling with their incentive mechanism. And so I came in and offered to write one for them because I was talking to their competitor, Bittensor, I think it is, Subnet 30. Not bad guys, but they were just not receptive at all. But they were a very receptive team, Subnet 41. So we wrote a very good white paper which built a bulletproof incentive mechanism for sports betting. And so that was a fun job to do. And we just kind of boiled everything down into all of this experience that I've gained, understanding how to build edges and understanding really what the B2B industry would want to see. So if you have a customer who wants to actually buy this product, they're going to want to see your incentive mechanism doing certain things, paying attention to what's important, which is the edge that you manufacture at the point of the line's close. Okay, so that's kind of what we wrote in the white paper. So I helped them with that, and that was pretty good. So I had a pretty good relationship with them, and then I started mining because obviously I have the machine learning algorithms. So I was mining there quite a bit. Hit number one about half the time there, and so I just noticed that they needed a little bit help to get more people like me on, because in Bittensor you really need to have a large array of people who are very good at what they do but have diverse outcomes, so that when customers come and they want to kind of consume that, they see that, hey, Stephen Rothwell's there. I'm going to buy a little bit of him because I like what he does in MLB. But I also might like Grant, who's like a really good NBA bettor, has a very specific way of doing things, and Stephen just doesn't do as good as Grant. So we need to have like a critical mass of sports bettors who are very, very good at what they do. And so I just kind of noticed that I was just beating everyone all the time. And so I came on actually a week or two ago as their head of AI to help them build their base models and to help them integrate with many dozens of people in the industry who can help them reach that critical mass. So kind of my position there now is to build base models and to make sure that miners can't come on and make any money if they suck. So sorry, I'll just be very blunt. And if you're very good though, if you can beat me, God bless. You're probably going to get a good deal. And at the same time, I'm going to introduce them to many big hitters in the industry so that they can grow a more professional cadre of sports bettors and more of a diverse outcome, right? Like we were talking about. We want diverse sports, diverse outcomes, diverse looks at the same sport. So I might model MLB in one way, and Grant, you might model MLB in another way, and you might complement me or do better in ways that I don't. And so we want to have multiple ensembles of very good bettors in each of the sports, and that's what creates a very lucrative and attractive picture for B2B deals to occur. Yeah.
And then I guess two follow-ups to that. The incentive mechanism currently is based off of the closing line, and it's how much positive EV someone has against the closing line. And then for the diversity of models, why is it important to have this diversity of different models? If you could
Right.
explain.
Yeah. Good question. So, yeah. So you can, in the academics, in the academia, in the journals, it's kind of consensus that. I'm sorry, I just got a little pop up there. It's kind of a consensus that the closing line is the point of maximum information. It's maximum information is factored into the line. It's just like sell the news in Bitcoin when all the information is factored in, everyone sells it off. So it's the same idea here, where the closing line represents the maximum amount of information put in, weighted by actual real money, money on the line by people who have done their calculations and thrown it in there. So that's the point of minimum entropy, and the point where you want to have the maximum impact of your algorithm, because you're showing that you can beat Everyone else, after all the information has been factored in, therefore you're in the right tail that we were talking about. You're in the right tail of models. You're firmly in the right tail of models. Because if you do it early, which is Subnet 30's thesis, if you do it very early, like 8, 12, 24 hours before the game starts, you're just really playing off of information gain. You're not really showing that you have a machine dominance and intelligence that can outperform everyone else. You're just showing that you can, like gather information better than other people very early on. And so that has value, but it doesn't have critical risk management value to the B2B firms who would buy such a product, because most of the money that is bet is an hour before, like, the football game starts, NFL Sunday, right? So lots of people want to bet a week before, but your bets are limited to $500. But on NFL game day, it's $1,000,000. So where does all the money come? It's right at the time when the game starts. So you want to make sure that the models that you're purporting that can be beneficial to your customer are actually beating the closing line, the point of maximum information. If you do that, boy, oh boy, do you have a valuable product. So we want our miners to beat that. And so they have to bet 24 hours, 12 hours, 4 hours, and 10 minutes before the game starts. And that 10-minute is the most highly weighted one. That's the incentive mechanism. And so if you beat that 10-minute line consistently, boy, you're going to get a good deal. You're going to get a great deal. Yeah. That's what people are looking for, really. And so, also on the follow-up, the diversity. Why does the diversity matter? Well, the idea is that, let's again use the example of both of us making a machine learning model. I might use certain features or points of data. Sorry, we call them features in machine learning for those who aren't machine learning scientists. If you have data and you're optimizing over a certain thing, so for me, I might optimize over batting performance. I might really think that's important. You might optimize over pitching performance. Some other people might really highly weight the relief because they think that the game really doesn't start until the 7th inning. That's a valid thing. People might optimize over different types of target variables or outcomes that they're looking for, and they might use different sets of data. I might use pitch effects data. You might use team-based aggregate data, player aggregate data. The windows of time where you're aggregating your features might be very different. So we might be learning different things over different types of models. And so that diversity is very important because you might be better at ascertaining the proper outcome at the closing time, where the closing line is established. You might be better at certain types of bets, like maybe favorites, and I might be better at underdogs. And so it's actually better if for a customer to pick me for certain bets, pick you for certain bets, because combining them together is stronger as a whole than the individual alone. And that's why diversity is very important, because there's many ways to optimize over a data set. It's how you pose your problem and what data you actually include into it. And that is an infinitude of optionality. And so that's why we want many diverse models. As Guy Kawasaki says, let 1,000 flowers bloom. That's the way to do it.
And then I guess to step back and see how Subnet 41 fits into the broader picture of Bittensor, how would you define the aim or goal or mission of Bittensor and what it's doing? And you mentioned that it changed a bit. So I guess from the beginning to what you'd say it changed to, or is changing to.
Yeah, I got you. So yeah, Bittensor in its original vision was the correct vision, which was we have tokens. People in crypto community buy the tokens. That money gets transferred to the subnet owner. The subnet owner distributes that to the miner through the incentive mechanism to attract talented machine learning scientists to create novel, intelligent AI that can be applied to a market. And then the subnets can sell that in the market and then return that money back to the Tau investor. That's the meritorious effect of the emissive system of Tau. That's what I think it should be. Its only reason to exist is to incentivize world-changing inference that interacts with markets. That's what I think should happen. Anything else shouldn't be on Bittensor, in my opinion. Might be a little opinionated there.
You had an interesting point there about inference. You said you want, or it should be inference applied to markets, not inference, I guess, any other type, just inference applied towards markets. Why is this the case? Or why do you think that? Why is this your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, inference is just interactions between statistics and computer science. You're inferring some sort of relationship between data and some outcome, and you're doing that on a computer where probably a human can't parse through so much data and learn things. It would take us a billion years to build a model by hand. So like it's just that's all inference is. It's just really the idea that you're predicting something and you're trying to make some sort of causal mapping between the inputs and the output. That's all it is really. And in frequentism, we have to have a thing called error bars, and so we're trying to give a range too. We're trying to say, well, this is what we think the relationship is, and here's the probable range of error of that. That's to me what inference is, and in itself, that's very boring and has no real value because thank you for predicting something. I can predict that the sun will come up tomorrow with a very high probability. I could do that. But are you going to buy that data from me or that product? Probably not, because you can probably assume that there's no value in that because you're going to just predict the sun will come up every morning. There has to be a market for the thing that you're predicting. And that's one of the most important things in Bittensor that you have to assess that what a subnet is doing. Like it's nice if I don't want to pick on anyone or anything. Like I do that enough on X, but it's nice that you predict something. But if your prediction has no value in a highly liquid market, preferably adversarial in nature, what are you even doing, and why are you taking emissions? And so that's kind of what I mean. There's, in AI we have, specific generations, and the third generation of AI was just like neural nets and machine learning. Like let's build black box systems and find correlations between data and try to predict things. And that has been very successful, culminating in transformers in 2017 and LLMs and that's all they really do. LLMs just predict the next word in a sequence of words. It's not smart. It's not intelligent. It really doesn't do anything special. And I don't even know if LLMs really have much of a market. Like, is OpenAI even profitable? I don't think so. And so if you're not making any money or there's no market to interact with, I don't know what the value of inference is. And so I just wanted to make that point. And that's a point I make all the time on X, and I don't think a lot of people like that point a lot because it kind of pokes a hole in the narrative. And but it's an important one to understand. The next generation of AI that really matters is those that mix neural nets, correlative, a focus on correlative inference, like on correlates in the data. You're making very good predictions. You're really getting some high signal out of these data sets, and then marrying that with a market. That's where I think the real value is, and I just want to make that point. It's very important to me.
You do make that point a good amount on X. I have seen it a few times.
A little bit.
Yeah. How do you, I guess, reason with LLMs producing code and that code is some software that gets sold? Like, how do you categorize that?
If you're selling something and sorry, just adjust my camera. If you're selling something and you can prove it, that's what we're looking for on Bittensor, I think, as alpha investors. Don't just say you're going to sell something. You have to prove that there's a liquid market for the things that you're doing. So just because on TradFi, if there's a LLM that's producing code and selling it, I don't know of one that's actually doing that yet. I don't think there's any quality code coming yet out of LLM. I think there's quality code coming from programmers who use LLMs in tandem with their own ability to produce good code. But I've never seen code produced by an LLM outperform a team of computer scientists yet. I have not seen that yet. Maybe you can point me in that direction, but it's a little much to build up delusional fantasies about what a market will be in the future, as opposed to many problems that are actually viable now. That these nice inference based systems that can be run on things like Shoots or like 19 or whatever. You can run things on them, and you can actually attack real markets right now. And good examples in Bittensor are Next Place. That's a real market that can be attacked right now that is multi-billions. Sports Tensor, multi-billion-dollar market. I think 25 billion a year is the year-over-year attackable market here. What else? Dippy RPG is pretty good. I think LLMs based in RPG games, which are very boring and monotone, like World of Warcraft and stuff, can breathe new life into these types of games. These are real world markets, and when you see teams like this actually address the fact that their inference must actually be attached to some sort of causal relationship in a market, I think that is a very good thing to look out for. I think some subnets which don't really do anything and they don't have any addressable market, maybe not so special. Like, I just don't understand why I would need picks and shovels on BitTensor when I can get picks and shovels in Web2 and just mine or do the same thing that anybody can do on BitTensor, but cheaper, way cheaper. So I just don't understand the need for some subnets. Yeah. I really like markets and interacting with markets. I guess that's the TLDR.
And I guess to clarify my question, I was thinking more so tools like Cursor that now have had like almost mass adoption, I'd say at this point, of people using the product to build other things. I don't know what you think about that.
Does Cursor actually build entire code bases for companies without a single human interacting with it? That would be my question for you.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, in tandem. A person's working in tandem with the LLM.
Yes. Yes. So it's not really the LLM doing the work. An LLM is just synthesizing information for you to do the actual work. So I think there's a market there for that. Sure, I think so. But thinking that you can just spin up some sort of general global inference that solves some major problem without massive specialized effort is a huge mistake to make mentally. That will never happen, not for many years yet, because there's no such thing as AGI, and we're not even close to that. So I think that though computer-assisted code is a good idea. I like that because generally it's us, we're doing the work, and if we can synthesize information faster. So for instance, I'll give you an example. So say I get an error in my programming language of choice. Let's say Elixir. I get an error. It's very obscure. I don't know what it means. Maybe it has some machine code in there that points to some sort of error with CUDA, which is a GPU language. And I just don't know what that means. And then I push that into the LLM and it goes, oh, I know what that means because I can look it up faster. I can see this code means your CUDA init function is not working properly and therefore do this. That is very useful. But that's a far cry away from code being able to write its own general inference that actually has an addressable market and is like efficient and runs properly. These code-based LLMs that generate code still are rife with errors. Like I use it all the time, like daily in my job, because it's fast, right? Gets you information quickly. But it still makes like dozens of mistakes every time I try to get it to do something anything close to complex. So we're very far away still from LLMs having any use. Now, I might be wrong here in the sense that the acceleration curve of the LLM might be much faster than I'm thinking it is. But I'm a very skeptical guy because I'm a little older and I've been through an AI winter before. I think a lot of people now in Bittensor have not been through an AI winter. They're in AI summer, which is the ups and downs of the AI industry. And I really do think that people are overblowing what's the word I'm looking for? The value of the LLM. I don't think they're as valuable as people think they are. In essence, they're just word predictors. That's all they are. There's nothing intelligent going on there. That's it.
I would say that probably is where your opinion differs from most is everyone sees this super acceleration in the capabilities of LLMs, and you're saying, I don't know if it's going to be that good.
I don't think so. I think it's a little bit of hopium there, but I could be wrong. That acceleration curve might change with new data sources. You never know. Who knows what Elon will come up with next with in terms of data sets? But I think we've pretty much exhausted the the capability of transformer based LLMs. Like now we're in academia, they're just tinkering on the edges right now and making it a little better, a little better. There's only so much you can do with the data sets that are available to us. I just don't know. I just don't understand why people think that's going to generally turn into, artificial general intelligence, which is still probably 100 years off, in my opinion. That's just me. That's where I come from, and so
Well,
I'm a very bearish on it. Yeah.
when you say artificial general intelligence, how do you define that? Because everybody has a different definition or idea of what that means.
Oh, the AI can self-learn. It can take its contextual data and then learn to better itself without having to use data provided by us humans to mimic kind of what we're doing. So its ability to self-learn and continuously get better and better at what it does and posit its own questions about how it wants to interact with the world. Right now, we posit all the questions, right? We encode the questions that we want the AI to learn. That's the optimization part of it. We're telling it what the optimization is. Now, when a computer can make its own optimizations by interacting with information from the outside world, and it goes, okay, I've been doing this, but maybe I could try this, and nobody's telling me what to do. That's me saying that because I'm looking at all the information from the outside world, and then it makes something new and it optimizes something new and generates a new capability that we've never thought of before. That would be AGI to me. It's the ability to make its own optimizations that improve itself without any interaction at all. That is so far away. We're ridiculously far away from that.
And then how do you see the fourth turning? And is that going to be caused by AI? Is that your mindset there for the societal shift?
Oh, you mean fourth wave, right? I guess the fourth wave of AI.
Uh,
What do you mean by
More
fourth turning?
well, fourth turning like the society, like massive societal shifts, like every like 80 to 100 years. But yeah, we can go with yours. Fourth wave AI. What do you think about? I'm not familiar with fourth wave AI, so.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so yeah, the next there's probably two big things that could happen for AI that change everything. Like, how can I say that without sounding hyperbolic? We'll change everything in such a way that it just makes our world so different. The two things would be obviously the emergence of AGI. So if computers can just start learning how to build their own optimizations without us being there, and those optimizations are actually relevant to the outside world, like they interact with us humans, the market data, internet data, and it can just start building new and exciting things without us being there. That's like outrageous. That's when you should be a little bit scared that the world's going to change pretty quickly here. And I think there's a few famous computer scientists, like the guy who invented backprop. I always forget his name, but he's like very scared about that happening like pretty soon. And so I think that's why a lot of people get hyped up. But for me, AGI is far off. What I think could be very interesting is quantum AI. So as a quantum computing guy, I follow that a lot, and there's been a lot of advancement in quantum machine learning. And quantum computers are very interesting because they optimize things much, much, much faster than a classical computer. And there are certain problems called NP-hard problems, which are just very intractable. And we as computer scientists cannot use classical algorithm, classical computer to solve those things. But if Google or China or who else is doing this, D-Wave or any of these guys end up building a quantum computer with enough qubits to solve intractable problems, that opens up a huge new array of problems that we have never been able to tackle, like optimizing portfolios of 100 stocks. That will crush a computer and just, you can't do it. You can't do it on a classical computer. But imagine you can do this now, and the efficiency that brings to global finance, the efficiency that brings to logistical systems, like shipping containers, which have millions upon millions of variables associated with those things. Imagine you can do those calculations now in a very short period of time. Imagine you can break cryptocurrency because you're using Shor's algorithm, a particular type of algorithm in quantum mechanics, where you can now crack crypto codes in RSA 256. That'll scare a lot of people. So I think it's very interesting if these new types of computational paradigms get built, because it opens up a whole new range of optimizations that we've never thought of before. And I'm very, very excited about that. I used to be very bearish on quantum computing because, just being in the industry, I just know the fantasy that the theorists and how people on X get it wrong all the time. 100% of the time they're wrong about quantum computing. But when I see actual advancement get made at an accelerative pace, faster than I thought they would accelerate, because I'm a lab physicist, I'm a lab guy, so I built these things with my hand and with other people, not just me, but many, many other people. When you see people at Google like making these claims and actually following through with it, it's like, whoa, in 10 years we might have 1,000 qubit quantum computer, and it starts to threaten RSA and world cryptography. This is a huge change in AI, because it just opens up new types of problems that we thought were intractable. So I think, get excited about that. That would be very, very, very cool to happen.
So in your opinion, quantum computing is much more in the short-term future in the cards than AGI is.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're knocking on that doorstep now of basically the unit, the qubit, the thing, the unit of information in quantum computing, of holding that thing stable and able to error correct itself and to generate proper results, consistent results. The work being done at Google by Harmut Nevin is outrageous. And now China is, just the other day, came out and said, they have working quantum systems that are quite big. All it takes is that accelerative parabolic shift, somebody to figure out how to get thousands and thousands of these small units in the quantum regime to work together on a chip. And it changes a lot of things really, really fast, particularly for AI, because optimization is embedded in the physical system itself. So imagine just dozens of valuable new problems being opened up overnight. That is very exciting to me.
What do you think this will do to prediction markets?
Well, not so much, because the idea of like this vast speed up, so it speeds up problems which were intractable. So problems that would take 1,000 years for a football field of H100. So like imagine all of Chutes and all of their H100 GPUs are like chunking away on a problem. There are some problems where even with all of that compute power, it would take 1,000 years to compute a result, to compute an answer for that. And on a quantum computer, shrinks down really, really fast. It's just that notion of polynomial scale or exponential scale. Polynomial time scale. We are bringing down the time it takes to compute these intractable problems to something that's actually tractable. So it doesn't matter how many GPUs you can make. You can never solve these on a classical computer. On a quantum computer, you can do such a thing if you have enough qubits on your chips. So it's very, very interesting. For prediction markets, I think we can handle these things on classical computers, so the speed up really doesn't matter. It's just really the intractable problems that explode in terms of their possible outputs. So for instance, picking stocks, like, imagine you're flipping a binary for each stock, that grows very, very fast every stock you add. So if you're predicting 50 stocks at once and trying to optimize that, that's a huge problem. That's it actually blows up the amount of configurations that you can try to predict on. So I think so, not so much for prediction markets, but for these big problems where it's just heavy lifting has to happen. I think that's going to change a lot of things when quantum computing becomes more stable.
And then in prediction markets for AI, exploration versus exploitation is a big concept. So how do you balance or manage the dynamic between the two, between testing new strategies and, using current ones that are effective?
Well, this is a solved problem already. This is a classical problem in computer science, explore exploit, or better said, multi-arm bandit models. So essentially, if you're a subnet and you're offering a diverse set of miners and you're collecting miners data and you're offering them as the product, you want to offer to the end customer the ability to exploit those models, right? That's the whole idea of Bittensor, I think, anyways, or why a subnet should exist. And so we should probably as subnets or subnet owners, we should probably encode the ability for people to, basically explore all of these miners and basically pick the ones that they think are the best for them. And so we should probably give dashboards and the ability to look at like the individual predictions that go in. So basically in Subnet 41, we have a dashboard. Each miner, you can see each of the predictions. You can see how powerful the prediction was compared to the market, how far off they were. And so you can actually go and explore right now on their dashboard all of the different diverse opinions, and then the ability to pull in those opinions that matter most to your operation, because you might be very NBA heavy, you might be very MLB heavy. There should be a way to go in and grab the ones that you want, and so it's up to the subnet to sort of package all that together. And so I feel like the ability to explore is kind of nascent to BitTensor products, because that's what miners really are. Is like this. Each one of them are like a slot machine in a multi-arm bandit model, and so I just really feel that it's not really well understood, I think, how to exploit the miners yet, because when you start to exploit a miner, so say I get on and I give you my miner and it's very good, and you start to exploit it, another customer will come along and go, well, I like that guy too, and so they start to take my data, and then that data starts to interact with the market. And then it starts to change the odds in the sports book because it's very good data. And so suddenly, as everyone kind of piles in on that one miner, maybe the value of that miner just starts to spread out, and it becomes just unvaluable over time because it gets factored into the line. And so there's always this dynamic between the miners and the customer where they're trying to exploit each one, but they don't know if another actor is exploiting it as well. It's only implicit in how the lines change in the market. And so I think this is a problem for any subnet where it's like, okay, great, you're making inference, you're inferring some relationship between your data and some output, some predictive output. How do you know how that's going to affect the market you're trying to interact with, right? Like, how do you know that? So, another good example is Next Place. I'll use them as an example, something that I really like. So imagine everyone in the same neighborhood is using Next Place to evaluate their houses, and they start to evaluate their houses so well that there's no alpha in for a buyer to come in and buy that house because they're not mispricing the houses enough. And so the buyer doesn't come into that neighborhood anymore because they're so good at AI and they're valuing their neighborhood so well. There's no real value in this neighborhood. I'll maybe check these guys out who don't use Next Place. There's always a balance between the exploitation of data and the need to go and explore new models. And so, how this gets solved on BitTensor is for each product is nascent to each subnet, but it's going to be a problem here because once data is free, once data is open sourced and it's not hidden behind contracts where it's locked away from other people from accessing it, it's all open source, it's all accessible for a fee. that data will ebb and flow in its value compared to what other people are doing, and more importantly, how it's being used by the customers in the actual market itself. So explore exploit is that concept, is the push and pull between the data and the agents who use that data. For instance, again, in Subnet 41, if we keep selling our data over and over to robotic agents on Solana, very, very quickly, that data will become absolutely useless because it just gets bet into the market and therefore it has no fundamental value anymore. So how do you, as a subnet, engage with the customer and make sure that you maintain the optimized value of your miner's data? Very important question, and a question I don't see a lot of subnets really thinking about too much, but it's real.
Is it possible then to actually attract the best miners in the world? Because if you had the best sports betting model, why make it accessible to others? Why not you just exploit it yourself?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Definitely, I wouldn't have come on to Subnet 41 if I didn't have any financial interest in doing such a thing. I don't think one of the things that I criticize Jacob, the owner of, or the inventor of Bittensor, a lot on is the fact that if miners aren't making enough money from their efforts, because the Tau price keeps getting depressed. Are we allowed to talk about price here? Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, you can talk
Okay,
about
good.
whatever you want here.
Whew. Okay, I like price talk. So if the Tau price does not rise to $2,000 or $3,000, we're not going to have subnet summer. It's not going to happen. And so we need to have a continuously rising price in either the mother asset Tau or the alpha itself. The alpha token itself has to rise and generate a lot of money for these miners because they're coming on. So a good sports bettor is making a free roll of like $50,000 a week. I need to make that much money. I don't. When I was mining, I made nowhere close to that. Maybe like $600, $700 a day when I was number one. It ebbs and flows, but that's not enough to stay interested. What you're hoping for is that the subnets can monetize that information, sell it to B2B, take the profits, return it back, buy the alpha token, raise the price of the token, and make my contributions more valuable. It's up to the subnet to package the data, package the information, do a very good job, and get it done so that the miners can earn more and more and more. Because you're right, it's not fair that if I'm the best in the world and I'm given well, I'm not the best in the world, but I'm pretty good, and I don't want to give my data away for free. I definitely don't want to give my data away for decreasing price over time. Okay, and I don't want to do that. It better increase. And so my main criticism of Tau is that the subnets that take the most emissions aren't producing any money, and you have to produce money here. And when you say that, they get so mad, they freak out. They're so mad. Well, no, this is the fundamental nature of Bittensor. This is what a subnet is. You have to go and take that miner data, make money in the real world market, and then have the courage and the integrity to return that money back to the miners so that their token value goes up over time. And of course, when that happens and people see that happening, there's a meritorious effect where in the general crypto market, people see these subnets making money and they're like, whoa, I should buy some Tau and get in on that because I want to get in on that exploit as well. So there's that meritorious growth effect that we need to manifest. That does not happen when subnets are not focused on profitability, or not enough weights are going to those that are focused on profitability to support the science experiments, and which is basically most of Tau. It's just science experiments with no market. That's good too, because there's utility to the world for solving things like protein folding. Very good to do this. And drug manufacturing. But if you have no customers and you're not making money, problem. The problem is that generally our ecosystem is going to fizzle out and scale out and become flat, and that there's no real profitability going on. We really need that to happen for Bittensor to grow. And sorry, I'm going on a bit of a diatribe here, but it's like very important that this happens. And so for Subnet 41, this is why we're so hot on it. Why I'm hot on it, because I know the team is using the information to not only bet into polling a market and not only to do interactions with B2B customers. I'll leave that to them to announce that and stuff like that. But there's some stuff going on. We want that money to return back into alpha purchases, constant alpha purchases, so that people can realize their value of mining the token, basically. And so that's the meritorious effect that should be generated.
And you've highlighted two subnets specifically. The one you work with very closely, 41, your head of AI there, and then Next Place. These are both operating in prediction markets. Are there any types of subnets that you see are best suited for long-term success within Bittensor outside of prediction markets?
Sure, I can give you. So there are good problems here being solved. The 404 is pretty good. The 3D modeling, I'm pretty critical of their ability to do that at a level that's at a level that might attract customers like Weta or Pixar or something like that. I just don't think they'll be using them for 3D models anytime soon. But these Unity gamers, they're you go to the like Unity gaming builders and they're like building models and it's so painful. I really like that type of market. I'm not too sure that's a prediction market. I think that's just a raw product for a material. And so I like things like that where there's a pretty clear market. I'm generally pretty bearish on subnet owners who bite off more than they can chew, because I just know how hard some problems really are to solve. And I'm very impressed with 404, although I think that maybe it gets really, really hard pretty soon for them as models get more complex, particularly shading and lighting. And these things are like not easy to build. And so as long as they tone down their problem, and that's a good example. Another good example are the drug company ones, like protein binding is very important. I do think that's a very hard problem to solve, though. I don't think that's so easy, and you have to pay people a lot of money to provide that data. It's just not something you can pay somebody $100 a day to do. So that's another example of a very useful product, although I do think that the owners are biting off more than they can chew. I do think protein folding and chemical binding data or binding site data where two molecules bind together. I think these are very, very hard problems to solve, generally just because I have myself modeled chemical dynamics. That's one of my papers, and I just know how brutally computationally difficult that is. I think it took me 7 months to build an energy surface once just for one of those problems, 7 months of compute. So like I just don't understand how they're going to attract miners to their system unless we get a much higher tau price. Now, if tau is $2,000 or $3,000, and the protein binding people are offering like significant, like $10,000 a day for people to come on, now that is financially viable, because now teams could come in where each machine learning miner is each machine learning scientist is $500,000 a year in just salary. Like that's what we make. Like it's not cheap if we're good at what we do. So we need that higher price to kick in, and I just don't think that happens if we keep giving weights to like Shoots and Targon and Subnet 8, and I just don't know what they do, and I know that other people do actual things that can make money right now, and I like those things, because if we give those guys the weights, they can support the bigger stuff, and so we need to be more fair with the emissive structure, I think, and that's what I'm always on about on the RAW channel. And I don't think anyone listens to me, but I really do see that as probably a better, more optimal solution for Bittensor in the short term, where we're more concentrated on profitability to support and sustain, and then those big guys come in once we have a $2,000 or $3,000 tau. That is when protein binding. That is when 404, and these other big ideas. There's a few very big ideas here that need more money to really make it. That's when things really shine, and that's when tau becomes a global household name. So different strategy, different point of view, probably not liked, pretty contrarian, but I think it's pretty logical what I'm saying. It's up to people to interpret, I guess, though.
Yeah, definitely a more contrarian opinion on your subnet picks there.
Yeah,
Are there
I think
any
I think Jacob is the opposite. He's on the moon, man. He's not on the moon. He's on like Titan. He's way out there in the solar system, thinking about big projects and big agentic systems. Come, you can take this subnet, this, put it all together. There's no market for that, and like, no, it's far away from that. And so, I think there's a balance between you know. Moonshots and actual practical bricks and mortar building a business that's sustainable. And so I don't know why building a brick and mortar business is contrarian, really, but it seems to be on Bittensor. Everyone wants the moonshot, but it's not going to happen without a $2,000 or $3,000 Tau, in my opinion. So that's just me, though. Sorry, I want to.
You don't see like these agentic systems like the Jacob sometimes will hint at ha happening?
No, no, agentic systems are garbage, and I'll tell you why. Because it's what we've been talking about: explore, exploit, right? So imagine that you use Shoots and 19 and all these guys to, spin up a million agents. I've seen Jacob say that, a million agents, and then you get out there. But every time you do that, what happens, Grant, in the explore, exploit problem? What happens? Well, you're now diluting the value of your product very, very quickly because everyone's now spinning up the same agent on the same data. It's just like in sports betting when everyone has the same data, same algorithm, it's the same odd, and you're not really generating any edge because you're just getting the same odd, and it's because everyone's doing the same thing. So everyone thinks that on Solana it's going to be agent explosion, and they're all going to be doing things, but these agents are just all doing the same thing off the same data set, off the same LLM, off the same image recognition. And so the first one is good, the second one is okay, the third, and it just starts to dilute very, very quickly. Second of all, humans are very adverse to they're very clever at understanding when we're talking together as a human to a human, and there's a very rich dialogue, there's diction, there's opinion, and sometimes it could be adversarial or it can come together, and we pick up on these things. And when you have a soulless agentic robot like on Twitter with like a little robot sign, and it's just like bibble babbling a bunch of crap that you don't care about, and like it's nice the first 4 times you go, that's cool. Like I follow Billy Bet, which is a customer of Subnet 41. It's pretty funny. Billy has like a funny way of doing things, but as more Billy Bets get made, Billy Bets is just going to disappear, and that's the price is going to go down. And so I just really don't think this agentic explosion has any value because their agents interact with the market, and that's what we're talking about. They interact with a real market. The market is for attention. That's the currency, is our attention and our pleasure and the feelings that we get when we interact with things that are talking to us on a social media platform. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like these agentic bots. I block them whenever I see them because they're just so annoying. I like them for the first 2 weeks, but it gets boring very, very fast. And that's the one thing I think Jacob doesn't understand is that, there is actually a market that you have to interact with. And when you do that, it very much changes the outlook of agentic explosion maxis. I don't think that's going to end very well for people who think that. So more control, have more control. If you're a subnet, don't give your data to 1,000 agents. Give it to 1, 2. That's what we do at Subnet 41. We have 1 agent customer, and that's it. Nobody else is going to get that data. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not the CEO, but I think that I strongly suggest to our CEO, Lucian, that you do not give it to more than 1 or 2 guys because it'll just dilute the value of the inference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach that I haven't heard anyone talk about, is the alpha decay essentially of these agents. Because if everyone can spin up the same agent, there is no benefit in having access to that agent.
Absolutely. It's just everyone's eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day, every meal, forever.
And you said, well, the first one is has the most benefit. Second one has less and less and less. They're competing for attention with these Twitter agents specifically. Is there any ways to stand out besides just being first?
Yeah, by having access to inference nobody else does. Just like in sports betting, if you have access to any data that nobody else does, and you exploit it properly, you make so much money. The minute anybody else gets that data, it's over. You lose your edge. So the idea in agentic systems is that if you have a subnet with very, very good miner data, just make a relationship with one or two agents, and then that's it. Really, really exploit that, get a good token price out of that, and then make sure that there's nobody else competing with you. That it'll just die quickly if that's happening. So kind of sourcing good information, sourcing really good inference with unique insights really gives that agent a lot of flavor, and it'll kind of rise up through the noise, the sea of noise, because it does interesting things. Yeah. Also, make Trump posts. That probably gets a lot of attention. Trump, anti-Trump or pro-Trump posts will get you 10 times the volume of just some guy talking about sports.
Something that elicits emotion.
Yes, that's right. That's a very smart thing to do. You're emotion hacking the mind of the plebeian.
So it sounds like you'd believe the basically differentiating factor in all of this is just the baseline data that models are trained on. And it's getting proprietary data is the edge.
That's right. And that's what subnet is. That's what a subnet is. It's the back end for an agentic economy. If you flood the agentic economy with all your data, there's no agentic economy.
So do you see a bottleneck in our ability to collect data?
Well, collecting data, I think, is that's a pretty deep issue, right? Because either you're scraping data, you can use a subnet here to scrape things. You can have relationships with big companies that give you data. You can get weights from large data computations, like Llama. You just take the weights and then you try to improve on that. There's many ways to get data that can create inference, and the edge of a subnet is getting that data, or building relationships with miners that can get that data and then produce the output that is valuable to the customers that you're trying to address. So I think it's just super important to ask each subnet, what are they, where are you getting your data? What are your relationships with your miners? Are they just coming on and mining things, or do they give you access to underlying data? I think there's like a lot of nuance there in the question you asked. It's just like, you're only as good as the data that goes into your inference, right? So garbage in, garbage out is a classic phrase for that. And so if all your miners are just inputting garbage and outputting garbage, you might have a nice incentive curve, but it's all garbage anyway. You still have to actually reward good intelligence that impacts the market, and that is just really dependent on the data that the miners collect. No data, no inference, right? It's just as simple as that.
And do you see synthetic data playing any sort of beneficial role moving forward?
No, not at
No,
all.
none at all.
No, I can make up data. I can make up data all the time. I can just write a loop that makes random numbers and then tell you it's it's the bee's knees, but it's just synthetic. It's not real. It doesn't. Data should be a statistic that reflects something real in the real world that you're trying to interact with and solve for, right? So I don't know what synthetic data means. I mean, there are techniques in machine learning where if you have some data, like say you have two classes of data, one there's a lot and one there's just a very little bit. Okay, there's a lot of data here for like 90%. Let me give you a good example. So 90% of the people want to buy orange juice, 10% of the people want to buy apple juice, right? So that it's very, very accurate model just to say buy orange juice, right? 90%. However, you can take that 10% data and you can do something called SMOUT, which is a resampling technique to make synthetic data on your real data so that the data sets are equal in size, and that just makes for a better optimization. But you still need a little seed of real data to make some sort of statistical assumption of building synthetic data on top of that. So you can build synthetic data that actually adds value, but you still need some real world data to guide that along, if you get what I mean there. So that's called resampling in statistics, and it does work. But if you're just making synthetic data sets, garbage. It's garbage in, garbage out, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, though.
And then I guess another random point I think about sometimes is subnets in decline and their emissions going to near zero and the team abandons it. How do we avoid that? How do we almost recycle that subnet UID?
Um, I would say just extract all of the tau from their AMM, leave them with $1. Yeah, don't give them anything. That's up to OTF to figure that out. But I think that if a subnet's not performing, they should go down to $1 of tau in their AMM. That solves the problem right there. If the market truly should solve the problem, then the market should truly solve the problem. I think that's what OTF is pretty big on. So just don't reward subnets that don't make profit. But that's not what we do on Bittensor. We reward those who make the least profit. The memes and Subnet 73 and just random subnets with no code. We reward that more than subnets actually making profit. Yeah, so maybe it's a mental choice of the community to simply not buy alpha tokens at all for subnets that can't show a balance sheet can't show a balance sheet. So I just think that for me, that's what I always argue about all the time. And but it just falls on deaf ears. We just reward whatever we feel like we're going to make $1 from in the future. So I think a lot of people were speculating on Subnet 72 or something. This is Jacob Const's Subnet. We're going to make a 10x on this right away when that's announced, and then they just go to zero. I'm just like, I just don't understand the mentality of not investing in something that is not profitable or is not proving that they're going to generate profit to reward the miner who is working their ass off for the subnet. That's just me though.
Do you relate those to just meme coins and traditional crypto?
Well, I think 99% of crypto is a meme, so it's it's like I don't expect too much from Bittensor subnets, but I definitely wouldn't place my money in anything that I didn't think had like my personal choice is just like there's only three subnets that I would give money to right now.
Really?
Yeah, the rest are just not investable at all.
Interesting. Interesting.
I look at the proportion between how much emissions you get and how much buybacks you're making. I think that's very important to do.
So for you, it's all about the buyback. That's how you judge basically the merit of a subnet.
Well, we're going to zero if we don't do that. So, period. You can't keep diluting. That's Algod Striker. You might know as Striker, but his name is actually Algod. He's a famous guy from the Luna days, the Terra Luna days. Predicted the collapse and shorted that pretty good. I think that that he's right. I think that maybe don't emit a bunch of tokens to people who don't make any money because it's just going to drive the Tau holder crazy as they see the price never go up and it just constantly dies next to the Bitcoin pair. So the Bitcoin pair is just going down and down and down and down. And people think that there's going to be some sort of subnet summer going on, but it's not going to happen unless Shoots, Subnet 8, and Targon make $10 million each and plug it all back into the system in the next 5 months. The bear market is like 12 months away. So like, why are we investing in things that aren't profitable in bear markets? That's one criticism that I have. But, again, contrarian, unliked. We all think that we're going to, $60,000 Tau, and I just don't see that happening.
You said bear market's 12 months away. You're
Yeah.
talking overall market cycle bear market?
Oh yeah, big time.
What's
I think
your
so.
thought process there? What's the rationale for the 12-month time frame?
Well, well, inflation is going to rear its head again pretty quickly. Economically speaking, we're back in the Volcker curve where you have three spikes of inflation. They've done a pretty good job at bringing the first spike, which went to 10%, back down to 2.5. Trump's tariffs are going to keep things on a damper. But the Democrats are probably going to win the midterm, and so that's just going to hamper everything the Trump admin wants to do. Everything falls after that as chaos comes into the next presidential election. People will start factoring that into the market as they realize that the administration is a bit bereft in their ability to get anything done because there's a political deadlock in the states. Fortunately, everything sort of derives itself from the Federal Reserve's decisions. And the minute that they see inflation start to rise again, they're going to get super, super QT again. And once QT happens, it's over. And plus, we're entering into sort of the last phase of Bitcoin's rise. So, we do have cycles here in Bitcoin, and we're kind of entering that last leg up where we're going to get the last bit of distribution and then just a very natural downturn, right? That always happens in crypto, but the natural downturn is going to coincide with an insane administration's policies to tariff everything and get into war with every country in the world. But we still depend on the US dollar and the printing of the US dollar to spike the price of cryptocurrency assets or risk assets in general. I just really don't see risk being too attractive in about 12 months, I would say. We're going to have one last leg and then down. Just my opinion, but, the chickens are going to come home to roost eventually. And so what happens is how does Tao survive that? That's what I'm very concerned with. That's what I always think about and talk about. That's why I'm always contrarian. It's like I want to survive and have Tao thrive in the bear. And so that's why I have the opinions that I have, much to the discontent of a few.
Yeah, you are a fan of the contrarian opinions. Not a believer in the super cycle, eh?
Well, we're at the end of our Bitcoin in 2013 was 15K after the SBF scandal, and we have risen quite a lot. The MVRV is getting pretty close to burnt out here. So I do think we have a rise to 120, 130 coming in a short alt season, which could be exasperated. Or is that the word? No, it could be extended is actually the word that I'm looking for. It could be extended by QE if that happens. I think Trump has a 50% chance of QE, so we can get a really nice pump to maybe 800, 1,000 Tau. That's the time to sell and, save up all of those shekels for the time when it comes all the way back down, and that's when you want to buy again, when the things are just depressed and low, and I think that's coming. It's unavoidable. There's too much debt, and unless the government wants to print its way to the moon, where are we going to find the money to go up more? I don't get it. So especially when there's like coins exploding all the time, more and more protocols, more and more buckets to fill with water, and there's only so much water, right? So that's kind of my macro outlook on
The
the
macro
situation.
outlook.
Yeah.
And you've had some good macro takes in the past. Who do you think's going to be the next administration? I know it's a few, almost 4 years away, but you've had some good takes there. Who do you think's going to be the next?
Generally they do reverse, but I just think Trump destroyed the Democrats. I won't get too much into politics, but I'm not a big fan. But I think he just destroyed their funding apparatus. That's what he's been doing. And if he passes like voting laws and actually deports a little, but like maybe you don't have to deport people. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but maybe just like don't let people who are not Americans vote. Like just don't let that happen. And I think that maybe Republicans will get another term, but it'll be pretty stunted, right? It'll be like a weakling, like JD Vance or something gets in and he's like just triples his eyeliner and it's just like on the camera fighting the media, but it's just really ineffective. Everything is ineffective in our society. It's really capital flows based upon decisions by the Fed, fiscal dominance or fiscal weakening, and these are the things that just really drive things. It's not really a president that drives things, although Trump is pretty effective with his tariffs. But in general, the economy will ebb and flow as it does on the business cycle, and not by short-term political fluctuations.
Does Canada? This last question: does Canada become the 51st state?
Well, I'd like to personally. I know that would probably get me killed in the east of Canada, but I'm from Western Canada. and I have been my whole life. And so Western Canada is kind of like the Rust Belt, just treated badly. Like, like we're always never given a political opinion. We're ruled by Eastern majority, particularly French Canadian majority, who just rules everything. And so we have not had a voice for dozens and dozens of years, but we pay billions and billions of dollars in tax to these, I guess, provinces we call them, but they're like states in America, right? So in the West, we give a lot of money. So there's a big schism between the West and the East. West is conservative, East is liberal. And I'd like to see deeper ties with America. Maybe not becoming American, but I like deeper ties with America. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think America's the best market in the world. A little bit nutty sometimes for me in terms of politics, but I do like the business of America. America is just still the best market in the world, the freest nation, and I'd like to see Canada deepen those ties a little bit more instead of fighting all the time. Like, we don't have to fight America. We can work together and build just a very, very great partnership and friendship. And that's what I like. We've all my life since I was a kid pro-American, and I think Americans like Canadians too. Just maybe not our government so much. Maybe not the greatest, but that'll pass in time. Things ebb and flow, and hopefully we can deepen ties and become even better friends. That would be my bull case. Yeah.
It's interesting to hear. You have almost a market first approach to everything, it sounds like. What do you think, like, made your thinking market first in this way?
Because markets are eternal. They never die. They're always 24/7. Political ideologies die all the time. They don't matter. They ebb and flow. It's just like a butterfly on the wind. But markets are what drive our productivity, our families, our values, our ability to rise up and have a better life, to have meaning in our life. Without free markets and cooperation, relationships, and friendships, we have no meaning in life. We'll just be poor and destitute and upset and always just political all the time. I don't really want that for the world. I just want people to have good families, family values, be accepting of other people's foibles and differences, but at the same time, be prosperous. And prosperity allows for things like art and politics and science and all these things to flourish. And so it just underlies everything, in my opinion. Everything's a transaction if you think about it.
That's beautiful. Well said. Well, I'll end it here with this is it. Last question. What is one piece of advice you would give to AI developers or like domain specific experts? In your case, you were a betting expert, sports betting, when entering the Bittensor ecosystem. What advice would you give to those type of people?
That's a tough one. Entering in which way? A minor subnet owner?
However you see best fit for an AI developer or like specific domain expert when approaching the ecosystem.
Be realistic about your assumptions. Be humble and realistic about where you think BitTensor can go. Don't fall into the trap of Moon Boy. That's the worst. I've seen that kill every single protocol in crypto since 2017. It's a constant drain on the mental state of a protocol when you overestimate or overshoot the capability of an ecosystem to grow. Growth is hard. Growth takes time. And that means that you have to be humble and realistic when you come in, when you buy Tau. When you come in, you buy Tau right now for $250. Don't get mad if it doesn't go as to $5,000. Instead, think of how the ecosystem works, how you can help it grow. Find your part in that ecosystem, and just growing $1 at a time is the right way to think about things. And don't get too defensive when people start being critical about certain aspects of it. We need to find that sweet spot for Tau as a general collective to grow, to have a network grow. If the network doesn't grow, we die. So we really want newcomers to come in with a sober perspective, I think. And through that sobriety, we build a better consensus, which is grounded in market-based economics and truth, as well as the ability to speculate and to dream as well. Because when you have a strong basis, a strong foundation, it allows dreamers to dream, and that's what we really want, I think, for Bittensor as an ecosystem. That's what I would want. That's just my opinion, of course, too.
Well, Stephen, it's always refreshing to hear a contrarian opinion. So thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Cheers, Grant. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.